How about that? So it's so good to be here with you on this Sunday morning and for this celebration. And I want us to just think about a few things about our scripture text that Sharm read 4 moments ago. It is one that is so well known that has given a label and a name to one of the disciples that we know whether or not we've been a part of the church for an hour or probably for years. The Doubting Thomas story seems to reappear every single Sunday after Easter because it is a part of the readings of the lectionary. I think that we live in a world of possibility. In a day and age like which we live in now, we have so many different choices from moment to moment and hour to hour. Sometimes all the choices and the demands can just seem completely overwhelming for all of us. We can choose what to do with our time, how to spend our time, who to spend our time with, what we will eat, how we will confront any kind of challenge that comes at us in this coming week. We all know so clearly that this year our country has a big choice to make about who it is that will be leading us. The possibilities before us in our personal lives as well as our communal lives are absolutely endless. But sometimes we miss seeing that there are possibilities out there because we become so focused on what is right in front of us that we cannot see anything else. And I believe that that is what was going on in the scripture text that we read from John chapter 20 just a little while ago. It begins by telling us that the disciples that Jesus loved were scared. They were scared for their life. The unthinkable had happened. And so what did they do? They locked themselves up in a room and fear consumed them. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to turn. And if we read closely and listen to the story, though, we realize that one of them is missing. They're not all there. Thomas is gone. And so if you're a curious person like I am, who has always asked 1,000,001 questions, my mother would tell you that I would argue and ask questions with Jesus if he was sitting in front of me. You ask the question, where is Thomas? Why is he not there? Why is he not with his friends in these very dark and lonely times? What was he doing? Like I said, they'd witnessed the absolute unspeakable take place, and they had every right to be scared. They were probably grief-stricken. They were lost. And there were so many things, I'm sure, going through each of their minds. They didn't know where to turn to for all the questions that they felt that they needed answers to. But Thomas, where was he? What was he doing? While he was out and about doing whatever it was he was doing, Jesus appeared to the disciples in that locked room. He showed them his hands, his feet, his sides. And when Thomas returned and came back, his friends told him what had happened. And he looked at them and basically responded by saying, yeah, right. I'll believe it when I see it. And I mean, who could really blame him after all? I think Thomas has kind of been given a bad label and a bad rap over the years because I know that he was not the only doubter in that room. I like to believe that I'm not the only doubter in this room as well. And I don't believe that doubting is necessarily a bad thing, as the church has sometimes made it out to be. At some point in our lives, doubt creeps in at different times. It crept into the hearts of the disciples throughout their journey. But Thomas was the one given the label, given the name, the doubter. I have a dear friend who's an Episcopal priest, and she's over the Episcopal Church of St. Thomas the Apostle in Dallas. If you ever want to look up their website, you just go to thedoubter.org, since it's St. Thomas the Apostle. It sticks in your mind for sure. And sometime this past week, when I was scrolling through Facebook, delaying writing the sermon, I found this image that I thought was very poignant. Thomas the Train has now even been turned into the Doubting Thomas. And it makes me wonder, what in the world is it coming to when we're turning our children's trains into holy figures and questioning tales? But this is what I invite us to think about today. I think Thomas was just like you and me in so many ways. I think he was a realist. I think that he was simply looking at what had just happened to him, and he was trying to find a way to live through it. I doubt that it was his personality to sit in a locked room and to be scared for his life. So instead, he went another way. He went out and about and did who knows what, but he did it with the effort of trying to find his way. And when he returned, his buddies told him a wild tale that he could not even fathom. And so he simply said to them, "I'll believe it when I see it." It was not that Thomas was a bad person. It was not that Thomas had lost all his faith. It was not that Thomas was so confused that he didn't believe anything that had happened around him. I think Thomas was simply looking at the facts, remembering all that had happened in front of him, and he just could not imagine in that moment that there was a possibility of something larger happening than he could see. That the possibility that a greater story, something, he was being invited to be a part of something that was not yet written in front of him, but he was yet invited to be a part of. Now, I like Thomas for a lot of reasons, and it's probably because I relate myself to him in some ways. I've often described myself as a realist, and throughout the time that I've been working in churches and in other places, I've worked with a lot of people who were the most optimistic people in the world. Life was all sunshine and roses, and you could tell them that something horrible had happened, and but that's okay. It's great to imagine that this is going to be the way that it is. And then I've worked with those who are pessimists, who live in such a dark and grungy existence that you take them outside and force their head up into the sky to see the sun is shining, and they won't believe you still. And then there's me, who gets stuck in whatever it is that's happening right in front of me. It happens, I'm focused on it, and I've got to find a way to deal with it, live with it, move through it, whatever. So, for an example, this week, as Sharm said, I have the real privilege of officing here now. And so I share an office with Lynn Deloney over in the foundation building. And so I was coming out of my office the other day, and I was walking to my car that was parked right over here by the Justin building, and I see this big orange sticker on my driver's side window. And I thought, oh, great, a political solicitation in the church parking lot. That's all I could think about. But as I got closer and my eyes focused a little bit more, I saw that it said, "Warning, parking violation." And I thought, what in the world? I've parked here now for a couple months, and what's going on? And I couldn't figure out what it was. I went on to read that they were going to tow my car that day, any hour. It was going to go to Lone Star Towing. And I thought, what is going on? I don't understand. And so I immediately started looking over my shoulder, like, who's watching me? Who's seen this happen? What, somebody videotaping me? And then I started looking for the tow truck, because if they were coming at any moment, they had to be pulling up right when I was there. And I thought, well, maybe I should check the tires and make sure they haven't been boot locked, where I can't leave. And I thought, I'm just leaving. I'm just going to get in my car, and if it runs, I'm going to go. And so I got in my car, I started it, and I thought, this is silly. I need to just write the people on staff and ask them, what is this? Do I need to park somewhere else? Do I need to give my information to somebody? Or is this simply a subtle reminder that maybe my free office space has come to an end? What is it? And so I sent off the email and prayed for the best and drove off. And thankfully, I'm still here and have a parking space and a car that wasn't hauled off. But I couldn't think of anything else at the moment except that I had done something wrong, and how could I fix it? I was very tunnel visioned at that moment. But on a more serious note, several of you I've had the privilege of getting to know over the past couple months since I've been here, and then there are others that I know have wondered where in the world did Tom drag me up from. I just kind of appeared out of nowhere and with no real explanation. And I've been, as Sharm said, working in the conference at churches and 2 different hospital systems as chaplain for so many years now, for about 15 years. And then this past summer, I had kind of changed paths a little bit and have started a nonprofit. And so Aaron, my husband, and I, and my daughter Maisie, who I'm thrilling right now, she's falling asleep, decided that we would start worshiping here at First Methodist Fort Worth. My intent was to worship here, come here on Sunday morning, sit in the back pew or on the back chair, not be noticed, and then go home and go about my day. And that worked for about 3 weeks or so. And then I began to be invited to be a part of this community in ways that I could not have even imagined, literally. And I've had the privilege of being with Sharm and Disciple Church, and now here working some with Tom and with all of you. And so it's a real privilege and honor to be here. But my journey was one that was on quite a path, and I knew where I was going, and I knew what I was called to, and I kind of had a routine and was doing what I was doing, and Aaron and I were married, and so 3 years ago, we found out we were expecting our first child, and we were absolutely elated, and we had great dreams and great hopes of what was going to be and what could come from this and how life was going to be for us. And then everything came to a screeching halt very, very quickly, very unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning about 2:20 in the morning. Our son Max was born. He was stillborn. He was absolutely beautiful. And my life took a turn that I could not have explained for you. I hit a dark place that I didn't know existed until I found myself sitting in the middle of it. All of our hopes and dreams suddenly ended. There was no way that they could happen or carry on. And during those first few weeks, I struggled with the reason for why I should continue to live. Because I asked questions like, why did he die and why did I survive? Why were they able to save me, but they couldn't save him? I asked, how could I go back to being me when I had no idea who me was anymore and I couldn't even look myself in the mirror? I was broken, more broken than I ever knew one person could be. But it was during that time that I held on with every ounce that I possibly could to the scripture that tells us that the darkness will always, always be overcome by the light. That the light is always, always brighter than any darkness that can ever, ever reach us. And then the Emerson quote that you found on the front of your bulletin that speaks of when it is dark enough you can see the stars. I had done a memorial service years before, and that was the final slide of a slideshow for a very young man who had died, and it always stuck to me. And in those very, very dark moments, I began to try my hardest to find some light. And it took me a while, I must say, but with the help of many, some who are in this room at this very moment, who sat with me and allowed me to ask questions, to explore where it was when I didn't make any sense at all about what I was thinking, they helped me to find my footing again. And I, like Thomas, then began to find my way. And so Aaron and I visited this retreat center in Wisconsin that was for grieving parents. And I came home from that place after laughing for the first time in a couple of months and feeling like a little bit of me might still exist. Dream. A dream that then turned into a calling that then just did not let me go, and I could not ignore it. And so last July, I left the local church that I had been serving, and I began the process of forming the nonprofit organization, A Memory Grows. And so in the fall, we will begin offering retreats for parents who are grieving the death of a child, anywhere from miscarriage to adult loss. And we hope and pray that we are able to provide a safe space, a healing space, where they can come together to share the doubts that they have, to ask the questions that others might not be able to sit and listen to them, to share their fears, but also to dream together once again about what the future may hold for them. A place where brokenness but wholeness is held hand in hand together, with the wish of what could be, with the gratefulness for what is held together. And our prayer is that through these retreats and these times together, that we will help to open the possibility that life can continue in such of a dark time, that there is light that still shines, that the light is still so much brighter than the loneliness that one can feel, and that love truly always carries on, no matter what it is that life brings to us. So you see, Thomas, when he finally encountered Christ and placed his hands within the wounds, he declared his belief. When I held my Max in my arms on that day, I realized somewhere deep within me that all that little child ever knew was love. He never knew the pain of this world or the disappointment. He never knew hatred or sadness. He never had anyone say a mean word that hurt his feelings. He was surrounded his whole life within the womb, within love. And I thought, if that love is so great and so profound, there is something about it that will not let me go. And I had to find some way and something to do with that love. And I think Thomas and the disciples were filled with a love as well, but they didn't know where to go with it or what to do. After Thomas declared his belief that day, after touching the wounds and seeing what he saw, I imagine that he still had doubts and questions along the way. Do I still second guess everything? Absolutely, I do. But I believe that it's in the curious questioning and in the wondering of our lives that we begin to open ourselves to the questions that can lead us to a deeper place. Questions that may not have any answers in this moment or in this lifetime even, but questions that will lead us from this moment forward. The great poet and novelist once said, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue, do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them." And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. I do believe very deeply that the possibility for our lives as individuals and as a community are endless. But we must open our eyes to be able to see that we are being invited to participate in a greater story than one that we can even imagine ourselves. And so I'd like for you to take that card that is sitting on your seat. Take it, and if you haven't written on it, I hope that you will in a few minutes, to write that question of faith or that doubt that you carry in your heart. And as we sing this beautiful song, "I Am Willing," I hope that you will bring it forward and you will drop it here on the altar table. Dropping it there is a symbol of us opening ourselves to the greater story that our Creator is writing even in this moment, inviting us to participate in. And I hope that when you leave this place today, you remember that no matter who you are or where you've been, no matter what doubts or questions you carry within your heart and soul, that we aren't to stay in a room locked in fear like the disciples, but that we are to be a part of a community that finds our way together. And that's what we here in this place are here for, to share these things, to ask these questions, to lift one another up, to offer hope in the times in which there is nothing but darkness, to be that light, to remember and to remind each other that we are not alone. So know on this day and in all the days ahead, no matter what it is that this life brings to you in these moments, no matter where you are, love will always find you. Let's stand and sing and bring our cards forward.